Good afternoon to all of you who are joining us from India, and good morning to those of you who are joining us from Europe. My name is Samrat Kumar. I am the country coordinator of EURAccess, and we are very happy to partner with the European Research Council and the EU delegation here in India for today's webinar. Today's webinar is on the European Research Council Synergy Grants. The European Research Council, for those who are not familiar yet, is the premier European funding organization for excellent frontier research. The ERC, as it's known, supports investigator-driven frontier research across all fields, and it awards grants to scientists and scholars from all over the world, both early career and senior researchers. Today's webinar focuses, as I said already, on the ERC Synergy Grants, which supports projects carried out by a group of researchers. And you will get all the details today in a few moments by our main speaker. So now, without further delay, I would like to welcome Tanja Friedrichs, head of the Research Innovation section at the EU delegation, together with her colleague, Dr. Vivek Dham, also advisor at the EU delegation. And I would like to ask Tanja to give some opening remarks to our audience. Thank you, Tanja.
Right. Thank you very much, Samrat. And first of all, I would like to thank you for the good cooperation that we had in setting up that, I would say, extra webinar on the many that we have done. But this webinar would not have been possible without the cooperation that we can benefit of our expert from Brussels, Agnes Kulkash, and so also a special thanks to her for in all of busy schedules, especially on this scheme, that she could take some time to share with us, and especially with the Indian scientific community to explain this. It's not a new scheme. It's been there, but it's much more focused now on and clearer on international dimension. And we truly believe that there is a lot of potential for Indian principal investigators to join and apply for that scheme. That's why every opportunity we can have to enlarge the EU-India partnership on research and innovation, we really take it. And we're already having a strong partnership always through our program Horizon Europe, which is now called Horizon Europe, whether it is in successful ERC grants as starters, or whether it's with our famous, also well-known Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions or collaboration. But that is a new action, which really we're very happy that thanks to Agnes, we can promote today. And the most happy is, of course, that we have such a large number of participants that express interest. And totally happy we will be if after this session, you consider to apply. You will have to be fast because, as Agnes will explain, the closing deadline is already 7th of November. So listen carefully. We will do that with you, and afterwards we will be available, as Samrat said, for questions and answers. So without due delay, we can go over to the main presenter today, but I leave that to you, Samrat. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your warm welcoming remarks, Tanja. And it gives us now immense pleasure to welcome our main speaker, Dr. Agnes Kulchar, Synergy Grants Coordinator at the European Research Council, joining us today from Brussels. Good morning to you, Agnes.
Good morning and good afternoon to all of you.
Thank you so much. Let me briefly introduce you to the audience. So she has experience in the coordination of various ERC individual grant evaluations, as well as in the work of a scientific officer. One of her essential tasks at the European Research Council is helping applicants and experts by responding to their queries about grant applications. So she is really the right person today for you, dear audience. And Agnes holds a PhD degree in biophysics, and she works at the ERC Executive Agency since 2009. So once again, a warm welcome to you, Agnes, and the mic and the screen is yours.
Thank you very much. Really, thank you very much for this opportunity. And I hope to be presenting well the call so that you can judge for yourself whether this is for you or not. So let me share my slides with you. Tell me if you see them.
Not yet. Yes.
Yeah? Okay. Yeah. Okay, then let me start. So while I'll be speaking about the Synergy Grants, but please allow me just to first introduce what we do exactly and what sort of funding schemes we have, and then to place the Synergy Grants within that. I will briefly talk about how to prepare an application, and also about the evaluation criteria, because these are very important when you are preparing your application. The evaluation process, that's very peculiar to the Synergy Grants and to the ERC in general as well. And then to give you some hints and tips for the future applications. So we are a funding body, one of the major funding bodies within the EU. We have 15 billion euros to spend in the next 7 years, which started now in 2021. And annually, we spend about 2 billion euros on research, and research which is mainly aimed for individual researchers. So how we are governed, that's also quite peculiar to Europe. We have a scientific council that is composed of 22, with a president, 22 very prominent scientists that are very free to design on how we are actually working. They are designing our calls, what the scientific community needs. And we, in the executive agency where I work, then we are executing these work programs. We implement the calls. We organize the peer review evaluation. So that's my job, for example, to organize, to make sure that every evaluation panel works in the same manner and that we are doing what actually the scientific council wants. But of course, the money comes from the European Commission. So we are bound by the rules of the European Commission, of the EU in general, when it comes about managing the grant agreements. And when it comes about managing the financial aspects or the scientific aspects of our projects. So we are essentially funding individual researchers, which means you are in a different career stage, you apply to an ERC. For that, you can be anywhere in the world, but you have to come to Europe to work and to spend at least 50% of your time. I'm talking about individual researchers. Synergy Grant is also for individual researchers, but for a group. I will speak about that. Any field of research, we don't have top-down priorities. You can apply to any field. We give grants that are usually of 5-year grants. They depend on where you are in the career stage. I will talk about that too, and how big they are. These are portable, so you as a grantee, the money is yours. So it's the host institution that manages it. However, if you don't like your host institution, you can take that money and go to another institution. And we are really looking for very interesting, innovative, high risk, high gain type of projects. Now, so we have 4 funding schemes, main research funding schemes. One is the starting grant. These are for younger researchers who are between 7 to 10 years after getting their PhD. So these people, as I said, they have to dedicate 50% of their time on the project and have to spend minimum 50% of their time in Europe. Their host institution has to be in Europe or an associated country. For example, Israel is an associated country, or Norway. And they can get usually 1.5 million euros with some extra 1 million for some special cases. If you will have any question on that, of course, I can explain. The next funding scheme is the consolidator grant that comes a bit later in your career, when you are between 7 to 12 years after your PhD. Here, the time requirement is a bit less, you get a bit more money, but still you have to spend, the host institution has to be in Europe or an associated country. Then we have the advanced grants. These are for very senior researchers. There is no PhD, formal PhD requirement for that, but they have to present their significant research achievements of the last 10 years. Why I'm presenting these? It's quite important for the Synergy Grants, because there we don't have a formal PhD requirement, so anyone can apply. However, they all have to be competitive at a level of an individual grantee. So their research profile, when they write the proposal, you as an applicant, you have to decide which profile you have, whether you're a starting grantee type or advanced grant, and you have to present your profile in such a manner in the proposal. And then there comes the synergy grant that I talked. So these are for 2, 3, or 4 principal investigators and their teams. Their teams can be in the same institutions, or they can come from another organization. They can be of any career stage. These are grants that run for 6 years, and they are usually of 10 million. And you can ask for an extra 4 million, for example, for infrastructure, or if you're moving to Europe. And there are some other examples too when you can. These are all described in the work program and in the information for applicants. That should be the main document when you're preparing an application. And here it's why it is important to you. It's because these grants can have a non-European, a non-associated country principal investigator, which can stay in the country where they are. So you, if you are an Indian researcher, and if you have two or three other PIs that come from Europe, and you have a super good research idea, then it's for you. But it's not a loose collaborative grant. And I will come back to this concept a bit later. So when you're applying, you're choosing your host institution, be that in India or in Europe. If you're applying for synergy grants, you cannot apply just alone. You have to apply with someone from Europe. All of you have to get support letter from your institutions, even if you come from India, because there is a commitment letter. Again, this sort of commitment letter, you can find it in the application system, or you can see it also in the information for applicant. It has to ensure that you as a PI are able to manage the research independently. You can apply for funding independently. You can publish whatever you wish, and you have access to reasonable space and facilities. And be sure that you can change it, can change constitution during the project's lifetime. So it's a negotiation between you and the HI when you are actually submitting a grant application to us. Now, synergy grants success rates. This is the last grant type that we had in 2020. In 2021, we didn't have a synergy grant. The reason for that is that we started a new framework program, and that got us a lot of delays with regards to funding, its legal basis approval by the member states. So every call, usually in the EU, was a bit delayed because of that. So then we opted to call it Synergy 22, but as you can see, we are in 2021 and it's already published. But for you to judge with who are you competing with and what are your chances of success. So in 2020 call, the success rate was 7.5%. For example, you can see there Cyprus, it had 1 grant. They only had 5 applications total, very few. Why, for example, from Germany, we have a lot more applications by hundreds. But you can see also that there were other host institutions, so PI based in Japan, in Chile, in Canada, Australia, and 5 in the US. So they are a bit more successful when they are applying here, possibly also because very outstanding researchers apply together with their fellow researchers in Europe. And when I looked at the data, because I want to find out whether there are any Indian researchers, so I think there was only 1 application in 2020 which had an Indian principal investigator, but among the projects that are funded, we have a partner. So a partner is not a PI in the project, not a principal investigator, but a team member. So it provides valuable research work, but not the main research work in the proposal. And we have, I think, a partner from India that gets, I think, around 1 million euros, if I'm not mistaken. So now about the design of the synergy call. So you as an Indian with an Indian host institution are considered as outside of EU or associated countries. So in these grants, only one of you can be present together with the other 2 or 3 other EU or associated countries. Again, who are the associated countries? When you go in the information for applicants, you can find that information. So for the 22 call that is now open, we have a budget of a bit less than 30 million euros. This will allow for about 30 grants to be funded because these grants are about 10 million euros each. You can apply for much less. That's not a problem. You apply even for 1 million if this is what you need in the grant. You can apply for shorter periods than the 6 years as well. But what we've seen is that usually these grants, they all run up for 6 years because of the ambition of the research that they put forward. When the PIs apply, there's no restriction on their location, but again, with the exception of one, they all have to spend 50% of their time in the European Union or associated countries. And each of the PIs have to spend at least 30% of their working time on this project. So the call opened in summer, but the submission system itself for submission of application opened on 3rd of September, and we will close it on 10 November. So you have about 1 month to still think about it, whether you can apply to it or not. So the main feature here, it's not really just a loose collaboration. The focus is again on the research. A research question, a very ambitious research question that absolutely cannot be solved by a PI working alone. So you have to prove in the proposal, which are, by the way, it's not a very long proposal. I will present the structure of it as well, that you cannot do that alone. You all need the other PIs to be complementary. And it's expected that you as a PI do remain part of the group as a whole, because each of the PIs, it's evaluated separately and together as well. And you are even named in the grant. So if one of them wants to leave, then the whole project will probably collapse. So the synergy is only important here as a means. It's not the end, just this buzzword of synergy. The know-how of the group, the expertise, and the combination of the scientific approaches is extremely important to solve this research problem. The PIs are equal. It's not, again, as another type of collaborative research project where you have a coordinator and then you have 10 partners which all do small parts of it. No, here, in fact, to be a corresponding PI, so to have this is a burden on you, because you cannot be, as an Indian researcher, you cannot be a corresponding PI. That has to be a European principal investigator. They will bear the administrative processes, or the correspondence goes through the corresponding PI. And as I mentioned earlier, the PIs can be of any career stage. So there is no formal requirement on the PhD. But again, you have to choose your type record very carefully when you apply. You have to know where do you stand in the research, whether you are more a consolidator or a very advanced type of researcher. And to see what is required for these profiles, please read the work program or read the information for applicants, because it is described for each of these profiles what you need to present. So the synergetic aspects. So the reviewers, in fact, are looking for a major scientific research question which has a transformative scientific potential. So it can be sure that it can yield something and that can be not addressed by an individual PI. And these teams that come together, this combination of the skills with the PIs holding a central role, it's very important. And this last sentence, PI must demonstrate that the groups can successfully bring together the scientific elements. These, in fact, are put in the evaluation questions. So the reviewers, they will be asked this: did they demonstrate that they bring together these elements or not? And then they will score you accordingly. So it's not a loose cooperation, not a simple passing of data, but as such, it's also not necessarily doesn't have to have the label of very interdisciplinary. By this, for example, I mean that you can have easily a condensed matter physics project where you have, for example, PIs that one of them is theoretician, the other one is an experimentalist. So in that sense, it's not interdisciplinary. They don't come from very distant scientific fields. But still, these two, if they do not collaborate, they cannot answer the scientific question. So it's again, always the focus is not just the groups, not the institutions. It doesn't really matter. The institutions are not even evaluated. It's only the science and who are these people who actually want to get this much money. So the proposal structure. So when you are starting a proposal, and again, as an Indian, if you don't find someone from Europe, you shouldn't even start a proposal. But to give you an idea, you have an administrative form, which is called Part A. This is about 10, 15 pages long. It has different information of your host institution, the budget, you have ethics questions. And this is where you actually, as an applicant, and where the corresponding PI who starts filling out these forms includes the keywords. These are, so in the regular calls, in the starting, consolidator, advanced grants calls, there is a set of panels, predefined panels. There are 27 currently. Each of these 27 panels, they range from mathematics to social sciences, to history, to chemistry, so everything. They really try to cover all scientific fields as scholarship. And in these 27 panels, each of them has between 20, 30 keywords. So there are hundreds of keywords that are available that we are also using in the Synergy grants to first allocate the proposals to the experts. So these need to be very carefully selected. Again, in the information for applicants, there's a list of these keywords. You can see around where your proposal could fit. And then you have the research proposal itself that is composed of two parts. One is only 5 pages long of the extended synopsis. It's a short description of your project. This is where all the PIs have to put in a 2-page per PI curriculum vitae, where there is a table also to explain the funding ID. And also there is possibility to present your track record, what you actually achieved as a scientist. Per PI, team members, partners, they don't have to fill in a curriculum vitae. That's not required. It's really the PIs, because the PIs are evaluated as a group. And then part B2, it's a 15-page scientific proposal where you are describing the state of the art and the objectives, the methodology, and then the resources, which is usually, again, around 2 pages per PI. This is outside of those 15 pages. And there's a budget breakdown table for each PI and then joint one. So all these parts, together with the commitment letters of the host institutions, with ethics document, if the proposals are touching on those subjects, have to be submitted at once. But again, part B1, it is not evaluated. It's evaluated through all steps. That's the short proposal. Only if you pass the first filtering step, that's when the reviewers will look at part B1 and part B2 as well. The administrative forms are not looked at by reviewers. That's never evaluated. That's administrative, internal. It's really part B1 and B2 counts for you as a researcher. These are just submission rules. You don't necessarily need to go. You will have the slides, so you can look at those. The ERC has very strict rules with regards to possible resubmissions. This is also to limit the number of applications, but also to give sufficient time for an application, for an applicant to prepare a better proposal. So we have 3 types of scores, A, B, C. C scores are only given in step 1, and they limit you to not apply for at least 2 years. So you will be able to apply the 3rd year afterwards. B is less limiting, and A scores are the one that either you pass to the next step, or when you are funded in the end, you get an A score. If you have got a B score, then you will not be funded. If you pass already step 1 or step 2, then you will not be restricted from further applying the next year. So you can immediately improve your proposals. All these rules, there's a bunch of other rules. There's in the work program and in information for applicants. So what are the evaluation criteria? They are only one. It is the excellence of the scientific quality of the proposal addressed on the PI level and on the research project level. So the reviewers will have questions, and the questions are in the proposal, in the information for applicants and work program. Read them. They target the groundbreaking nature, the potential scientific impact, the scientific approach, and how the group comes together as synergetic aspects. And in step 1, because it's only part B1 evaluated, that's a 5-page proposal, only the feasibility is addressed, and how actually the very details of your research project are evaluated only in later steps. And the budget as well, it's not assessed in step 1. That's not needed. They really just look at the science, whether it makes sense, and then they pass it or not. And they look also, as I said, it's done at 2 levels, the principal investigator levels. They will be looking whether at those benchmarks where the PI chose, is it good enough for the PI to get an ERC grant in general? And then they look at the group as a whole and how they come together. So the evaluation process, it may look a bit complicated. All the other ERC grants have only 2-step processes. We have a 3-step because of the complexity of the researchers. And also we have fewer reviewers than in the other cases. So how does it go? When you're applying, you don't have to really think of which ERC panel you apply. I mentioned already that there are 27 panels where the keywords come from, but not in Synergy. In Synergy, the keywords apply, but the panels no. So you just apply to a single panel. And then in this panel, which is composed about 87 panel members, it has 5 chairs, by the way, they will be evaluating this proposal. So each proposal is allocated between 4 and 5 experts. Now, because only 87 panel members have to cover all scientific fields, that's really not possible to cover well. But they evaluate from generalist perspective. So they are all selected very carefully by the Scientific Council to cover many scientific fields or several ones to be at the interface of disciplines. And they are also held by about 130 panel evaluators. These are panel members of regular other ERC calls, which can provide a more closer, narrower expertise to these proposals. So every proposal receives about 4 or 5 reviews. And then after a period of about 2 months, then in March, the 5 chairs and 6 vice chairs, I'm not going now into details why 6, but 11 people meet only. And then they select a number of proposals to pass through. So for example, in 2020, we had more than 440 proposals received, and they passed about 200 of these proposals to the next step. After each step, the PIs, the applicants get a feedback. So they get the detailed reasoning, they get the individual reviews as they were written by the reviewers and the panel comments summarizing the decision of the panel. And what is now interesting is that when we filter down the proposals, that's in step 2, then that's when 5 panels are formed. The 5 panels mainly target 2 of them, physical sciences and engineering, 2 life sciences type of proposals, and 1 panel targets social sciences and humanities in general. All of them are very interdisciplinary. It doesn't really matter where the proposal ends up because you have reviewers coming in and reviewing for different panels. So this is really just to be able to handle that number of proposals with that experts. So each of these 5 panels will have about 16 to 18 panel members as well. So usually there's again a remote phase. So after these panels are formed, these proposals are again allocated to panel members, but this time we are using a huge number, about 1,200 we used in 2020 of remote referees. These are extremely specialized reviewers. They work for free for the ERC. They are the best experts from all over the world. And they will be reviewing your proposal. So in general, every synergy proposal by the end of step 2 receives about 10 reviews, 3 or 4 of them coming from panel members that are generalists, as in step 1, but then they have the external specialized reviewers. Then the panels meet physically, and the whole panel, so each panel discusses these proposals. Again, if there's interdisciplinary proposals, then panelists from others, so if you have a proposal between social science and physical sciences, then it's sure then an expert from that panel comes into the discussion. And then again, they filter the proposals. And they can pass up to about 3 times the panel budget. So now, for example, for 2020, and it will be similar for 2022, about 100 proposals maximum can be passed to the very last stage. And in that stage, again, these 5 panels will interview US PIs. In normal times, when we didn't have COVID, then these PIs groups were required to come physically to Brussels. So all 2, 3, or 4 PIs, without exception, only if somebody was very seriously ill, for example, because these dates are known by you as an applicant beforehand, are required to come to Brussels for the interview. Now, last year, because of the COVID times, the interviews were held remotely. It's not ideal. We don't know what will happen in September 22, whether it will be remote, online interview or physical. That remains to be seen in the summer of next year. And then they will select about 30 to 40 proposals to fund these panels after the interviews. There are no new reviews written, but they are basing their judgment on the interview and all the reviews that were received prior to step 2. So how to prepare an ERC synergy proposal? Having a good idea that needs the joint effort of not more than 2 or 3 or 4 PIs. And it is, again, I'm emphasizing it, even forget the word consortium. It's not about that. It's a tight-knit small group of PIs and their teams. And all of you as PIs are equal and indispensable for the project. Get a letter of support in time from your host institution if you plan to apply. The template is in the information for applicants. What we have seen is that they have to, in synergy grants, usually to write a proposal takes more time than a regular cooperative project. The successful PIs, when they talk about how they got the grants, usually they say that it took them a lot more time than the normal grants, between 6 to even 1 year. So they refine it, they really polish the idea a lot, they talk a lot, they start to build up the working relationship with the other PIs. You have to be very much familiar with the evaluation criteria so that you can write your proposal in such a way that to respond to what the reviewers look for answers in your proposal. And you have to be absolutely sure that the extended proposal of 15 pages, it's not a repetition of the part B1, because both of them are read in step 2 by the specialists and by the panel members. Don't also underestimate the obstacle of different scientific languages. A catalyst means not the same for a chemist or for a physicist or for even a biologist. So that sometimes the researchers said that they underestimated when they started to work actually together or to write a proposal. So again, if your proposal is extremely challenging, you might need time to work on that as well. In all those grants that were successful and they reported, they said they got a lot of feedback from their peers. They read the proposals, they practiced their interview, they practiced a lot, they refined the project. And the other thing that I would like to ask you is that don't submit the proposal on the last day of the deadline, 10 November, because it just cuts it at 5 o'clock Brussels time. If it's not complete, you cannot submit it. If you have any errors in the forms, you cannot submit it, and that's done. You're out for a year. So when you plan to apply, and even now when you're thinking and you are thinking, why me? Why this group? Then think of people with whom you want together. And it's just not about going and searching the website now to see who's working on that. So that's why for this sort of grant, you need to prepare a lot more and find the right person in your field or in that field that you need for your proposal to work with, to see whether they are all internationally competitive. Is it the case that you really can manage this project for 6 years and manage a budget of 3-4 million euros? You can get it. That's not a problem to get it if you have a host institution in India. And again, the strength of the group, it's very important. And the elements that you bring together, both science and all the combination of the approaches that you have. And there's a series of points that I let you read as well when you will prepare. We have a template for the CV in the application template in part B1. When you are starting to write your application, it's on the funding and tenders portal of the European Commission. That's where you start writing an application. So do use that template. And there are certain things on how you explain your contribution. It's not a problem if you had research gaps, you can explain that. No need to provide any supporting documents on your PhD. And then there are other points, of course, and it's better maybe when you are actually preparing to read all these points. And about the research project, so we thought we spoke about as a PI, why me? But as a research project, you have to ask your questions. Why do you actually want to have this grant? Why it is so important to fund this research? Why now? How substantially you go beyond the state of the art. We know that ERC, they don't really fund incremental research. So if it's done and it's just a small step to that, it will not be funded. What do you get out for your disciplines? What if you even don't succeed? But what do you learn scientifically from it? What other fields can be even generated out of it? Why you are, again, the best persons or the only persons to carry it. Again, a person cannot be changed as a PI in the group. It's so important, each of them. Then you have to consider as well whether you are just a team member in this project or you are just as a PI. What is your contribution? How significantly you advance the science? How small part do you have in it? If you just have to do some experiments on certain aspects, then it's not a PI work. It's more a team member that can be outsourced. You have to question it's also, why is it timely? What's the risk? What's the gain scientifically out of it? And if it's so risky, then do you have a plan for managing it? What happens if you will not succeed anything? Again, in ERC grants, we don't have milestones or deliverables necessarily, or Gantt charts that you put in these applications. You are describing through the methodology and through the objectives what you want to do. And of course, it's frontier research, fundamental research a lot of time. So it's by nature, it might not work out. But if it will not work out and you are evaluated by your peers who are excellent scientists, they know what is going on in the field. They will know whether you can advance it or not. So you really have to think about this potential gain that you can have and alternatives for the risks. And then again, there are, as mentioned already, there are differences between part B1 and part B2. So the part B1, in those 5 pages, you have to explain well the groundbreaking nature with regards to the state of the art, the know-how of the group, and knowing that only this part is to be seen in step 1, nothing else, not the long proposal. So you have to convince them in the first step to go further for remote referees. And then in part B2, you have to go into sufficient details on methodology, and then you have to know your resources. So even if your host institution helps you with your requested resources, where you describe, when I talk about resources, not really the amounts itself, it's about what you actually need. Is it 2 PhDs, 3 students, 4 undergraduates? So how do you justify that? Or how do you justify an equipment that you want to ask? Or experiments outside of your lab. So all these things come as resources. And you have to explain the additional team members, not PIs, but additional team members, additional partners that come into your proposal. And the take-home message is, it is a very competitive call. we might have expect at least to be this competitive, if not even more, for 2022. So again, this joint effort and truly ambitious research question, it's the focus of it, and that it's not about a loose consortium. So it's this interaction, if I have to really summarize the call, it's that the end result should be more than the mere sum of the parts. And with regards to the Synergy Grants, so if you go on the ERC website, there are already 4 videos about existing Synergy Grants, so where the grantees, the PIs, talk about their grants and what it means to them and why it is different from other things. There's also search for the news, for the press releases, for example, of the 20 call of each year, because you have project examples. You can also search on our website for project examples. You can check who are the PIs, you can check what type of research is funded, and then you can think about it, whether you can fit in it or not. And you have national contact points in each country. And of course, always, if you have a specific question after you went through the work program or the information for applicants, then do write us a question and we are very happy to help you. So that's it from my side. And if you have questions, then I'm very much looking forward.
Thank you so much, Agnes, for a very informative overview of the Synergy Grants call, and also, you know, the evaluation process. And I think also the last slide with the hints and the tips, I think is also very useful for potential applicants. So we go now into a Q&A session with you, Agnes. Are you ready?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah? Okay. So let's start. We have a question from regarding the funding. So is it possible to split the additional 4 million euro among the part, like the PIs, or does it have to be used only by one partner alone?
Whatever combination is fine. So again, this 4 million category, so 10 million, you can ask for whatever. Usually this 4 million is not for resources. So not for people, not for salaries, but it is for infrastructure. So access
for
to
lab.
Infrastructure, for equipment. Even the lab costs can be included usually in the 10 million. It is really, if something is very significant, access to large facilities and things like that go in the above 10 million. But in any envelope, everything can be asked by partners or by the PIs, provided that it's justified and explained. So that the panels do not necessarily cut the budgets. That's never the case. It's very rarely they cut, but they do look whether that is justified in the proposal or not. And again, they are scientists, they know whether you need that equipment or not. So they will not cut it if they think it's not the right tool for you to do your experiment, but that's very rarely the case.
And a follow-up question was also regarding the staying with funding. Was it if funding can directly be allocated to partners or only to the PIs, and then it goes to the partners? Like, how's the procedure?
Directly to the partners, but in any EU project, the way it is done, it's that you're actually sending the money to the corresponding host institution, and then it's their duty to actually distribute the money to each host institutions or partners. In the proposal in part A, in the administrative form, we have only one line per legal entity who applies. So there you name the 4 PIs. They can come from the same host institution, by the way. They can say, I'm all from Cambridge and I want to partner a team member who's in India. They can add that partner as a partner without the PI. That's very clearly stated also in the administration forms. They can claim as much money as it is needed for their parts. But also you can have 4 PIs coming from 4 different institutions. And we have projects in which you have up to 4 or 5 different partners in addition to 4 PIs that come from all over the world. So that there's no restriction and they get direct funding. But in the part B2, when the resources go, there, the funding is per PI, so it's a different way of distributing, and an additional partner, it's not separate there. It has to be included under a certain PI's budget. But again, legally, the money will go to them depending on what they need.
Okay,
it's just
great.
a different presentation.
Okay, great. I think that's very clear. Another question or questions came regarding this 50% of the time has to be spent at the host institution at the European Union or associated countries. How is that very strict? Is there, do we have some flexibility in that? For instance, what if the majority of the research has to be done in the home country of the PI? And
now there's a misunderstanding. Then again, I'm saying it. So every PI, regardless where they are, have to spend minimum 30% of their time working on the project. Now, where they are, that's different matter. The PI who's applying with an Indian host institution does not have to spend any time in Europe. They can stay all the time there. For the other PIs, they do have this requirement to spend minimum 50%. Why I'm saying that? It's because we have PIs who work for professors in US as well, and who are as well in somewhere in Germany. If they apply with a German host institution, they have to ensure that during the project time, they spend half of their time in Europe working on the ERC. It's not the case for a PI from India. They can stay all the time there. But I guess the project will probably involve, because it's a very close collaboration, you have to really think on what do you do. Travels can be included in the resources as well.
Oh, well, thank you very much for clarifying. I think this is some very important point for many to consider when they're applying about how much time has to be spent where. And it's good to know that the Indian PI can stay. He doesn't have to travel, but of course, travel is part of research as well. Hopefully we will see more travels again in the coming years. One question also, Agnes, comes from a dear colleague from us from the German consulate in Bangalore. She's asking, is there an upper age limit? Like, can a retired Indian professor apply for a Synergy grant, for example? Or does he have to be affiliated?
There's no age limit. We have grantees who are 80 years old, and we have also a 25-year-old grantees. There's no age limit. However, you have to have a commitment letter from an institution. So somebody has to give you money to live on. I mean, the salary to do your research, the resources that goes with your research. You're not doing it in your closet, in your home, because, and that's the case, whether legally you are allowed to work at a certain age, whether your institution can provide you with that support letter and engage you for the duration of the grant. That differs, for example, in Europe. I don't know what's the case in India, but they can be. There's no limit absolutely on that.
Another question, Agnes, comes regarding the composition of the PIs. Like, do they have to be from different nationalities? And secondly, can they be from the same institution? Can we have more than one from the same institution? Or do they have to be all from different institutions and different countries?
That's again very unique to the ERC and to the Synergy grants. You can be from the same corridor. No one cares what nationality you have or where the institutions are located. We have grants where all PIs collaborated before and they work in the same institution and they got a grant. We have PIs who never knew each other. They collaborate in the 4 parts of Europe or or somebody from outside. There's no requirement. 2 can be from the same, a 3rd there. What matters again, it's just not a continuation of your work, that it's the science in it that matters. Where you come from doesn't.
Okay, great.
In other EU grants, you have a lot of constraints that you have to be transnational and other reasons, not in the Synergy grants.
That's very unique to it, as you said, yeah, right. Yes. How to find a potential collaborator from Europe? Like, I'm an Indian researcher and I really have a great research project. And could you like guide on that a bit or have any advice?
No. And the reason for that is that it's, of course, on the funding and tenders portal, that is the main portal where you submit grants in Europe. You can search for a partner. So if you go for that, you can do that. You can search for a particular field. You can, that's okay. So that's the place to go in general. But again, for Synergy grant, you need a very close collaboration with someone. So first of all, what is your research idea? You have it, fine. What don't you have? What other fields do you need? Then it's up to you to do your homework to find which research groups in the world do that, or in Europe do that, and write to them. Or if you found them and on the FNT, to write about that. But again, it might be very tight for this call. 1 month, it's usually barely enough to write a Synergy grant, even when you have all the PIs in place and you know what to do. Now, if you don't even know with whom you collaborate, to set up that in 1 month, it's very tight, but you're in time for next year, because next year in summer, in July, we will open the call. That time gives you a bit of breathing time to really prepare and find the right persons in time. Because if you start in the summer and next year only, it still will not be enough.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
We really want to have very good quality projects or proposals evaluated. So think twice before applying to the Synergy grants.
Yeah, I think that's a very important advice you're giving here. It needs to be really a close collaboration, and also the call is opening next year, so it gives some time for some of you who are looking for partners. Regarding proposals, Agnes, you were mentioning that there are previous proposals which one can see. Is there a link to it? Yeah.
I think there are in my
slide.
On one of my last slides, there was a link, but if you go on the ERC web page, so then there is a tab there which is about the projects, and you can search there all the Synergy grants. You can go into details about them. You can see the abstracts. You can see the link to the project's websites as well. So you can go there and then get more information directly from the websites and of the projects as well, what they are doing. And in all the press releases, that's very informative too, that we get out after every year. So that's in November. So you can search for press release Synergy 2020. There are a lot of examples on recently funded Synergy projects as well. There is a list, by the way, on the website too. If you go in the Synergy tab, there's a window where it's focused on Synergy grants. There are the videos as well, and that's where you have a question and answer part as well, and you can have the list of the projects with the name of the PIs, with the host institution. So a lot of information you can get there, and you can benchmark yourself against them.
Okay, wonderful. That's good, and we will also share the presentation slides of Agnes with you very shortly after the webinar, and also the recording will be made available for you. I would say we have one interesting question more. We have actually a few more questions, but I think because of time constraints, we'll just take this one. How about if you are working for an NGO, can you apply for ERC Synergy grants, or do you have to be within an academic institution?
No, we are very welcoming any type of institution. You can apply. Very much we're welcoming. It's interesting to have from industry or from NGOs. I don't think we ever had for any grant, but legally it's absolutely okay.
So it would be open for NGO work.
Again, is it really a research question? That's the question you should ask. And if you have certain ideas in your head, then go on our website. You can search by scientific fields, get familiar a bit with the panels or with the organization of the ERC. If you're going into social sciences, then a bit check there what sort of proposals are funded, in history or archaeology or even social science. I know that we have projects in individual grants to the Target India, quite some, but again, that's something specific, but we have other research projects that could be very interesting to the one who is applying.
And I just saw a last question.
Go ahead, I have time.
Yeah, because we have also participants from not only from India, but from the Philippines, for instance. And the same rules of eligibility and would apply also for research for the Philippines. So because today the webinar is focused for Indian researchers, but it's the same, right?
It's absolutely the same. They are outside of EU or associated countries. The same things apply. One of them can be a PI, And in a project, you can have partners from whatever countries in the world, provided it's explained and justified why those ones come and play.
Wonderful. Great. I would say, Agnes, we end the Q&A here, and we kindly ask all of you whose questions have not been answered, please send us an email, and we will try to help you to get your answers in as soon as possible, because as Agnes told, the call deadline is very soon. So we will try our best to help you to clarify all your remaining questions and doubts. But I would take now the opportunity to thank you very much, Agnes. It was on a very short notice, we know that, but you were immediately ready to come and give this presentation. I think it was really excellent and very informative. Also for me personally, I think I learned a lot about the Synergy Grants. And Tanya, what would you say? We learned a lot, and now we are well prepared to promote more this excellent call here in India.
I never contradict you, Samrat. No, I think we were right in asking, and lucky that we could have this ad hoc session on the Synergy Grant, because we looked at the call and we put it in, we tried to put it in normal wording, but your presentation was above that, Agnes. So our scientific community can be very happy and lucky. And I think, as you also said, Samrat, the tricks and hints were extremely useful. I think the most useful part. It is a complex scheme, Agnes, and no doubt about that. So also when we discussed on the opportunity to do it in such a short notice, I did say, let's do it, because there will be a call next year. So I also see this session as a warming up to next year. Because if we listen carefully, if you don't have already principal investigators in Europe, where you have already kind of discussed that idea that needs to be developed, it's extremely, not only short notice, but more of a lottery. And that is not what ERC is about. ERC is about funding scientific excellence. And also, you need to be able to draft it skillfully. And drafting in 10 pages is much more difficult than in 60 pages, a collaboration research. So all this, taking all these hints together, for those of you that are in the process already of doing it, I think you must have learned a lot, and please do. You can only increase your chances of being selected by submitting, but not just randomly. You need to have that very, very breakthrough idea that you want to develop with that amount of money and with extremely equivalent partners. So beginning of a journey, I would say, and I'm very, very grateful for Anya's explanations, the fact that we did it, and I hope we can call on you again next year, a bit earlier in the process. And also, as Samrat said, we remain available for those that are in the process of submitting it. If we can on short notice help to the extent that we can, we certainly will do it. But I think for today and at this stage, we did what we could, and it was well done. Thank you very much, everybody. And also to the participants. For such a specialized grant, we had a good number. It's extremely, it's as specialized as is the grant itself. It's a very complex. But I did promise, Agnes, I forgot to tell you that to President Jean-Pierre Bourguignon, who is a good friend of India. He's very keen on Indian scientific community and was always open to promoting the ERC grants, and you've given all the other options under the ERC with India. The message was that we should also do Synergy grants. So I will now do an email to him to say that thanks to you, we did it. And that is also very good. He is still there until end of October?
No, he left already. And we're waiting for the new president, Professor Maria Lettin, to take over.
1st of November.
Yeah.
But still, it was a promise that we had made, that I said, I will do it. And finally we did it. And that is very much thanks to you. And so it has really unlocked a lot of complexities. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Really, it was very nice experience. Thank you for the invitation again. I hope it was useful.
Absolutely.
Very useful. Absolutely. Really, we're very, very happy. And I think also our audience is very pleased, and with the comments we've seen, they're all thanking for this very informative webinar. And as Tanya said, you know, we are there to a certain extent, but this is also a warm-up for 2022. Yeah. So please go and check the call, you know, and the nitty-gritty details of it, and you know, really encourage you to apply for it now or the year after. And hope to see you very soon again, Agnes. Thank you so much again. And Tanya, as always, yeah, no words. Great pleasure with you. And yeah, we're having more things lined up in the coming weeks, and we will keep you all updated on that. Okay, wishing you all a very good day.
Hello. And, thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. And hello to ERC in Brussels. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Goodbye.